When it comes to classic Roblox, majority of players think of a time where games were a lot simpler. Games didn't have high quality visuals or complex mechanics, but they were fun to play nonetheless. But this era was special in the sense that Roblox had its own form of PvP, brick battle, or more specifically, the sword fighting aspect of it. And that's what I want to focus on today. Classic Roblox has a lot of games dedicated to sword fighting. Despite the fact it's only one out of the 7 original brick battle weapons, the sword's by far the most recognizable gear. Games like Sword Fighting Heights boosted its popularity back in the day, with a lot more sword fighting games coming out over the past. In general, this game genre has managed to garner a community that's lasted over 10 years at this point, and many sword dueling games still get recognition to this day. This video is going to be split into 2 sections. One focusing on the mechanics of the sword and how it really applies to the PvP setting. The second part of the video is more going to be gameplay footage from different sword fighting games that are still up today. In hindsight, the mechanics of the sword are pretty simple. One click will do a basic strike, nothing special. But the sword's secondary ability to lunge is by far the most important mechanic to use. A lunge will cause the sword to stay down for a brief period of time. Basically, you can do damage while maintaining a pretty good distance from your target. The enemies pretty much damage themselves, so you can get them to run right into your sword. Movement in sword fighting is also pretty important. And there's a couple ways to do it. Third person works, I guess. My visibility is fine, but the positioning of my sword is going to be a bit off, especially if I'm trying to spin around circles and attack multiple enemies at once. First person, more precise strikes, but my visibility is heavily limited. So how do we fix this? And that is why Roblox invented shift lock. Shift lock. You're basically moving in a first-person state, but you get the added benefit of having a third-person view. So now I can make precise strikes while also keeping a pretty good awareness of my surroundings at all times. Okay, that technical knowledge was nice and all, but how do you actually apply it? A pretty practical example would be this clip. An enemy's charging at me in a straight line. In other words, he's a free kill. All I have to do at this point is lunge and strafe around his left side. This way I ensure I don't make contact with his sword, but at the same time I'm able to hit him. And by the way, there are terms for these. The process of conducting the strike is actually called lunge timing. The part where you do the strafe is called a sidestep. Here I can showcase the exact same thing in this clip. There's my target, I strafe around him, and I barely survived that fight because I ran into his sword a little bit. And that's more of a common occurrence than you might think. It's not uncommon to exit a fight with a tiny amount of health left. Sometimes you might not be able to conduct a perfect strafe run. From gathering footage for this video, I've realized that sword fighting comes down to a couple things. Finding when your opponent screws up, and then following up with your own counterattack, which you hopefully don't also screw up. And doing a sidestep motion isn't the only tactic you can use. You can also take advantage of the lunge mechanics, ability to move a bit of horizontal moves, like this. So I float up. You can do that if you jump over them, you get them from behind. Yeah, you could also get your enemy into missing and then come at them from a different angle. That works too. Some people also like to spam the shift lock key and do this. So I guess they're covering all their angles, and it works. There's been somewhat of an issue so far. I haven't exactly showed clips of where I'm going up against experienced players in duels. If you want to fight against experienced players, look no further than custom duels. Pretty much the breeding ground for a lot of sword fighting tryhards. Take this clip for example. This guy is flicking his mouse like crazy and pressing every single button on his keyboard to make sure I can't get an opening. And it works, because I ended up losing this game 5-0. More experienced players in the sword fighting community may do these sporadic movements as a way to cover all their angles. At the same time, they're trying to pressure you into missing and being punished as a result. And this is what exactly happened to me in this round. When both players spawn, they're going to charge at each other towards the center. But then, they're kind of locked in a stalemate, because now you have three options. Either you play the neutral game, defensive game, or the offensive game. The neutral game is by far the most boring playstyle. Everyone is just waiting for the other side to screw up. It's essentially a prolonged staring contest. Or you can play the defensive game. You either sit there or you start backing up away from your opponent. You wait for the enemy to miss so you can go in for an easier counterattack. I'm more of a defensive player myself, so that's why I play more passively in these clips. The offensive game is by far the most riskiest playstyle, but it can work if you can pressure the enemy into missing or you go at an angle that they don't expect. And believe me, when you pull off this playstyle successfully, it is an amazing feeling. In the end, the winner of the round will be the person who has the best positioning and who has the best lunge timing, maybe a little luck as well. Sword fights are more or less a test of your patience. You need to find the right moment when your target is in the open, more preferably when the sword is stuck in its default position. When you miss a lunge, you're leaving yourself open to an attack. Lunges cannot be spammed, and there's going to be a brief window of when your sword is stuck in this vertical position. There's also a chance you might just end up taking the hit with barely any health left. Especially when two players are really experienced, there's a high chance that someone's timing is going to be off. At that point, you're just trying to minimize the amount of damage you're going to take. But most players live for those moments where they get kill after kill with flawless precision, and they end up raising their dopamine levels in the process. It's an amazing feeling. That is until you get killed by someone who snuck up behind you. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Sword fighting mechanics aren't hard by any means. The sword is like one of the oldest Roblox gears after all. It's more about your ability to be patient and act accordingly with your lunge timing. I know this video does seem kinda short, but sword fighting isn't that complex in all hindsight. So here's a quick list of games that I used to record footage for this video, or games I just noticed. It's been a while since I have played a couple sword fighting games. I wanted to make a video on it since this is a pretty old Roblox community, and it's impressive how it's still standing to this day. So if I did miss anything, please let me know in the comments. Anyways, goodbye.